Welcome back. Coinology. In 1982, the United States Mint stood at the edge of a transformation that would forever change the future of the American 1-cent coin. For over a century, the humble penny had carried the image of Abraham Lincoln and the words that captured a nation's ideals: liberty, in God we trust, and e pluribus unum. But beneath that familiar copper glow, something new was about to happen. Metal prices were rising, production costs were climbing, and the mint faced a critical decision. Should America continue to strike pennies made mostly of copper, or shift toward a cheaper metal that could keep the nation's smallest denomination alive? The result of that decision was the birth of one of the most fascinating and controversial pennies in modern history, the 1982 D. Lincoln cent minted in Denver. This small coin would become the subject of decades of curiosity, speculation, and even legend among collectors. At first glance, it looked just like any other penny in your change jar. But what lay beneath the surface, the subtle difference in weight, the hidden variations, and the tiny mint mark beneath Lincoln's shoulder, would go on to create stories of fortune, discovery, and mystery that numismatists still chase today. The year 1982 was a year of transition. The United States Mint made the radical shift from the long-used 95% copper composition to a new planchet made mostly of zinc, coated with a thin layer of copper to preserve the coin's familiar look. The reason was simple. The price of copper had climbed so high that the metal inside every penny was worth nearly as much as the coin's face value. It was an unsustainable situation. So, in mid-1982, production of the copper alloy cents ceased, and the zinc-based cents began. The two versions overlapped that year, both the heavy copper cents weighing about 3.11 grams and the lighter zinc cents weighing about 2.5 grams were struck, sometimes even at the same mint, sometimes using the same date. For collectors, this created a perfect storm. There were now multiple varieties of the 1982 Lincoln cent: small date, large date, copper, zinc, Philadelphia, Denver, each combination slightly different, each with its own story. And among them all, one particular coin from Denver, bearing the tiny D mint mark, would later become the focus of incredible attention. 1982 D small date copper penny is considered one of the rarest transitional errors in American coinage history. It shouldn't exist, according to mint records. By the time Denver began striking the small date design, all copper planchets should have been replaced by zinc ones. Yet a handful of copper examples slipped through, as if defying the mint's plans. Those few surviving coins, verified by professional grading services, would astonish the collecting world with their value, some estimated in the tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. The story of the 1982 D penny is not only about composition but also about identity. On its obverse, we see Abraham Lincoln, a design introduced in 1909 to mark the centennial of his birth. The portrait was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner, whose initials VDB famously appeared on the lower reverse of the first 1909 issues. The image of Lincoln remained almost unchanged through the decades, a quiet symbol of endurance through wars, depressions, and political upheavals. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial, designed by Frank Gasparo, stood as a mirror to the man on the obverse, Lincoln himself visible as a tiny statue within the memorial's central chamber. It was a design that had adorned the penny since 1959, marking the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Why 1982? This reverse design had been in circulation for more than 2 decades, yet it still carried emotional weight. Millions of Americans handled these coins daily, rarely noticing the artistry, the symbolism, or the E1982 D cent. Weight becomes everything. The difference between an ordinary penny and a piece of numismatic history worth a fortune. The density of copper gives the coin a slightly richer ring when dropped, a deeper hue, and a warmer luster that zinc can never quite imitate. Each 1982 D penny carries its own silent fingerprint, a trace of the time it was struck. Under magnification, the date reveals either a large or small font. The small date variety shows a 2 that aligns more evenly with the 8, while the large date version appears more open and higher in shape. These differences were not intentional artistic variations but rather the byproduct of changes in master dies during production, small technical shifts that would later become critical to collectors in determining which pennies were truly rare. Denver Mint itself had a long history of precision and productivity. Located at the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, it had served since 1906 as one of the nation's busiest mints, responsible for billions of circulating coins every year. By the early 1980s, its presses were capable of producing more than 100 coins per second. Yet, despite this industrial scale, human oversight and transitional confusion allowed rare combinations to emerge. It was in this setting, amid roaring presses, flying blanks, and shifts between copper and zinc, that the legendary 1982 small-date copper cents were born. Not 4 years after their release, no one paid attention. They passed from hand to hand, spent on candy, left in drawers, dropped between couch cushions. But the world of coin collecting is built on patience and detail. Slowly, experts began noticing anomalies. A few 1982 cents seemed too heavy, their tone too deep, their sound more resonant when flipped on a table. And then came the scales, the weighings, the discoveries. Word spread through coin shows and collector forums. Somewhere out there existed a 1982 small-date penny struck on a copper planchet. In the decades that followed, this penny achieved near mythical status. One example was authenticated by a leading grading service and sold privately for an extraordinary sum. Another was rumored to have fetched 6 figures. The legend grew with every passing year. People across America began checking their pocket change, their jars of old coins, their forgotten rolls of pennies, hoping to uncover one of these elusive treasures. It became not just a search for a coin, but a modern-day treasure hunt, a reminder that even the smallest piece of metal can hold unimaginable value when history, rarity, and chance align. Beyond the financial allure, the 1982 penny tells a larger story about American industry and adaptation. It represents a moment when economic forces compelled the mint to reinvent a national symbol. The shift from copper to zinc was not merely technical, it was philosophical. It asked whether tradition should yield to practicality, whether heritage could coexist with progress. In the end, the mint chose efficiency, and the zinc cent became the standard, a choice that remains controversial among collectors even today. Many still lament the loss of the pure copper penny, calling it the last true link to America's 19th century coinage legacy. Yet, it is precisely this transition that gave rise to some of the most valuable modern errors ever known. Every time a wrong planchet was fed into the press, every time an old die was paired with a new blank, history quietly recorded a mistake that would one day become priceless. The 1982 small-date copper cent stands as a monument to those small human moments within massive mechanical systems, reminders that even perfection-driven value reaches astronomical figures. Collectors describe holding it as a surreal experience, the weight of history in the palm of your hand, the knowledge that something so small could bridge decades of minting evolution and economic change. Market value of such coins fluctuates, yet in the mythology of collecting, value approaching $198 million captures the imagination of collectors and dreamers alike. Fascination also lies in the scientific precision behind identifying authenticity. Professionals use digital scales, X-ray fluorescence spectrometers, and metallurgical analysis to confirm whether a coin is truly copper or zinc beneath its surface. When a suspected 1982 small-date copper penny is tested and verified, it is encapsulated in a tamper-proof holder with certification that guarantees its identity. From that moment on, it becomes not just currency, but a relic, a physical narrative preserved for future generations. Presence of the D mint mark below the date tells another chapter. The 1982 penny may appear simple, yet within its copper sheen lies a labyrinth of stories that only grows deeper with time. After decades in circulation, collectors began to realize that this coin, once so common, had become an icon of uncertainty, a symbol of how a single year could blur the line between ordinary currency and priceless artifact. As the years rolled forward, the coin world found itself pulled again and again into the orbit of 1982, drawn by the mix of mystery, science, and speculation that surrounded it. Examining the 1982 penny, every detail becomes a window into the past. Under the magnifying glass, the texture of the surface tells of its composition. Copper-based cents reveal a richer grain, a subtle reddish tone that shifts with the light, while zinc cents often show microscopic bubbling or dark spots where the thin copper plating has separated over time. These physical traits have become the fingerprints of the two metals, allowing numismatists to distinguish them even without scales or machines. The human eye, trained through years of experience, can often sense what the instruments later confirm. Minting process that year was a marvel of mechanical precision but also a breeding ground for small inconsistencies. As the mint transitioned from one metal to another, leftover copper planchets, round, blank discs prepared for striking, remained in storage bins beside newer zinc ones. In the rush of production, a few copper blanks likely slipped into the feed lines meant for zinc. When the coin press struck those stray blanks, history quietly took an unexpected turn. That single act of oversight, unnoticed at the time, would decades later spark some of the greatest excitement in modern numismatics. The heart of the penny's allure is the idea of transformation. 1982 was not just a technical change, it was the end of an era. For nearly 173 years, the American cent had been a coin with real metal value, its copper content once a reflection of tangible worth. But by the early 1980s, inflation and rising commodity prices forced a reckoning. The mint could no longer afford to create coins that cost nearly as much to make as their face value. When the composition shifted to zinc, the penny became, in a way, symbolic, its worth now purely conceptual, its metal no longer equal to its promise. And that philosophical shift turned what seemed mundane into something profound. Design of the 1982 penny carried forward a lineage of art and ideology. Victor David Brenner's portrait of Abraham Lincoln, first introduced in 1909, continued to embody a century of American ideals. Every contour of Lincoln's face, every line of his coat, captured the gravity of a man who held a nation together during its darkest days. Brenner's initials, though once controversial, were now seen as a mark of artistic pride. The reverse design by Frank Gasparo portrayed the Lincoln Memorial, itself an architectural echo of the ancient temples of democracy. Hidden within its columns, the tiny figure of Lincoln sat eternal, as if watching over the millions of coins that bore his image. In Denver, where the D mint mark originated, workers performed their tasks with speed and accuracy. The rhythmic clatter of coin presses filled the air, each impact transforming blank metal into national symbol. Coins flowed down conveyors like rivers of copper light, inspected by machines that measured diameter, thickness, and strike clarity. Yet amid all that automation, perfection was never absolute. A single misplaced planchet, a minor difference in die alignment, or a slightly miscalibrated feeder could create a coin that broke the rules, a rarity born from a fraction of a second. As collectors in later years studied the surviving 1982 cents, they realized that these tiny differences in machinery and timing had given rise to an astonishing array of varieties. Not just one or two, but 7 distinct combinations emerged: large date copper, small date copper, large date zinc, small date zinc, each with either a Denver or Philadelphia origin. It was as if the year itself refused to settle into a single identity. In this storm of variations, the 1982 small date copper stood as the crown jewel, the accidental masterpiece that defied the mint's official narrative. Value of these coins has fluctuated dramatically with each discovery, each authentication. When the first verified example was announced, collectors could scarcely believe it. The coin's weight was confirmed at 3.11 grams, its surface composition analyzed, and its authenticity beyond question. In the world of numismatics, such a find is akin to discovering a missing chapter of history, a tangible link between two different monetary systems. Stories began to circulate about everyday people finding fortune in ordinary change. One tale told of a young collector who purchased a small batch of unsearched rolls from a bank and, upon weighing each coin, realized 1 penny felt heavier. That coin would later prove to be a genuine 1982 copper small date, changing the trajectory of his life. Another story described a retired machinist who, sorting through jars he had saved since the 1980s, found one with the unmistakable hue of true copper. Though these accounts often carry a touch of folklore, they highlight the dream that drives collectors, that somewhere, within the familiar rhythm of daily life, a miracle of rarity might be waiting to reveal itself. As numismatics evolved, so did the technology used to verify these treasures. Laboratories began using non-destructive analysis methods like X-ray fluorescence to measure elemental composition without damaging the coin. Microscopes captured details invisible to the naked eye: the subtle curvature of a numeral, the microtexture of the die polish, the presence of die markers specific to certain minting stages. These scientific tools transformed collecting from a hobby into a discipline of forensic precision. The 1982 cent became not just a curiosity, but a case study in the convergence of art, metallurgy, and economics. In many ways, the 1982 penny also reflects the spirit of American resilience. The early 1980s were a period of transition, industries shifting, prices rising, technology advancing. Even the smallest coin carried the imprint of those changes. It told a story of adaptation, of how a nation preserved its symbols while reimagining its materials. In that sense, each penny from that year is a microcosm of American endurance, proof that continuity can coexist with reinvention. As its legend spread, the market for rare 1982 cents became a realm of speculation and wonder. Auctions buzzed with anticipation whenever a new example surfaced. Collectors whispered about offers that reached astonishing sums, sometimes inflated by rumor, sometimes fueled by genuine awe. The idea that one of these coins could hold a theoretical value of nearly $200 million became a kind of myth, a symbol of how perception, rarity, and desire intertwine. Whether or not any real transaction has ever reached such a figure is secondary. What matters is the fascination, the hope that rarity might turn metal into treasure. Emotional weight of such stories cannot be understated. For some, these coins represent more than monetary worth. They are a connection to a simpler time, a fragment of childhood memory, the jingle of copper in a pocket, the smell of metal and paper. For others, they are symbols of human imperfection, proof that even massive systems can produce beauty by accident. And for historians, they are a reminder that every artifact carries the marks of its era: economic tension, industrial change, and national identity pressed into one small disc. Search for the 1982 D copper small date continues to this day. Online forums teem with discussions, videos, and analyses, each enthusiast offering theories, sharing photographs, comparing weights, debating authenticity. It has become more than a coin, it is a phenomenon, an enduring riddle. Thousands of people weigh their 1982 pennies on digital scales, hoping to see the numbers 3.10 or 3.11 flash on the display, hearts racing with the possibility that they might hold a lost piece of minting history. For those lucky enough to own a verified specimen, preservation becomes sacred duty. Coins are stored in climate-controlled environments, sealed in acrylic cases, protected from air, moisture, and handling. Each is documented, photographed, insured, not just as an object of value, but as a piece of the nation's story. When shown at coin shows or museums, they draw crowds who lean close, staring through glass, aware that they are looking at something nearly impossible. A mistake that became a masterpiece, and beyond its monetary and historical value lies something even more profound: the power of curiosity. The 1982 D penny teaches patience and observation. It encourages ordinary people to look more closely at the world around them. It reminds us that knowledge and attention can turn everyday moments into extraordinary discoveries. In a world dominated by technology and abstraction, this small coin brings people back to something tangible, something real, something that glints in the palm of the hand. Continued fascination with this penny also raises questions about the future of coinage itself. As digital payments replace cash, as physical money fades from daily use, what becomes of these symbols of national identity? Will future generations still feel the same thrill of discovery, the same reverence for a sliver of copper struck more than 40 years ago? Or will these stories live only in the archives of collectors and historians? Perhaps the 1982 D cent will serve as one of the last great legends of a disappearing age, when coins were not just transactions, but storytellers. And as time marches forward, the story of this coin expa. As the years moved on and the echoes of 1982 faded into history, the penny continued to serve its quiet duty in the pockets of millions. But for collectors and historians, that year never truly ended. It remained suspended in time, a turning point preserved in metal, a year that redefined the nature of American currency. And at the center of it all stood the 1982 D 1 cent coin, a piece so small yet so charged with mystery that it turned ordinary change into a portal to the past. To understand its deeper significance, one must return to the economics that shaped its birth. In the early 1980s, the price of copper surged far beyond what the United States Mint could afford. Each traditional penny, made of 95% copper and 5% tin and zinc, cost nearly as much to produce as its own face value, an unsustainable equation for a coin meant to symbolize modest worth. The Treasury faced a paradox. The nation's smallest coin was becoming too valuable to make. The decision to switch from copper to zinc was both pragmatic and symbolic. Zinc offered a cheaper, lighter core, coated with just enough copper to keep the coin's familiar color. Yet the change carried deeper cultural implications. Americans had long associated the penny with permanence, the solid feel of copper, the warm tone of a century-old tradition. Shifting to zinc meant embracing a future that was less tangible, more efficient, more aligned with economic reality than sentiment. The transition would save millions of dollars for the mint, but it would also mark the end of a material legacy stretching back to the very birth of American coinage. The presses in Denver began to strike the new zinc cents in 1982. No one imagined that a few leftover copper blanks would escape the changeover. Those copper planchets, remnants of the past, became like time travelers, anomalies that carried the soul of an older America into the machinery of a new one. When paired with the small date dies of that year, they created a hybrid coin that was never meant to exist. To collectors, this convergence of old and new became something sacred, a fleeting intersection between eras, frozen forever in a single strike. Each 1982D penny tells a story through its texture, its sound, its weight. The difference between copper and zinc is not merely chemical, it is almost poetic. A copper penny, when dropped on a tabletop, rings with a low, resonant tone, a sound that feels ancient and alive. A zinc penny, by contrast, falls with a dull, almost hollow clink. Those who spend hours sorting through coins begin to recognize the music of the metals, the symphony of history played in minor keys. That ability to hear value, to feel the weight of authenticity, transforms ordinary collecting into something spiritual, a dialogue between the past and the present through touch and sound. Design itself, unaltered through the transition, carries its own metaphors. Abraham Lincoln's steady gaze on the obverse is a reminder of endurance, a symbol of unity carved in a moment of national division more than a century earlier. The Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, standing in disciplined symmetry, becomes a mirror of that idea. Between these two images, one of man, one of monument, lies the nation's promise of continuity. The 1982D penny, in this way, represents not just a material shift, but the persistence of identity despite change. Behind the beauty of the design, however, lay an industrial ballet of unimaginable complexity. Coinage at the Denver Mint was a process of rhythm and precision. Massive hoppers fed thousands of planchets into press chambers, where dies struck each blank with 60 tons of force. The heat, the noise, the speed, all served a single purpose: to imprint an image that would endure decades of circulation. When a copper planchet mistakenly entered this zinc-designated line, the press would not hesitate. It struck the design with the same relentless force, oblivious to the history it was altering. One small act, unnoticed in the roar of machinery, gave birth to a miracle. Discovery of those miracles decades later rekindled a fire in the collecting world. Suddenly, the idea of finding one's fortune in a handful of change felt possible again. Coin shops buzzed with speculation. Collectors brought scales to flea markets and estate sales. Children borrowed magnifying glasses from their parents and began scanning dates on every penny they could find. 1982 became more than a number, it became a dream. Fascination with this coin also changed how people viewed money itself. For centuries, coins were symbols of trust, a shared belief in value. But the 1982D penny reminded everyone that within that trust lay layers of human error, transition, and chance. Its existence challenged the notion of uniformity, showing that even in mass production, uniqueness could persist. It whispered that value is not always printed on the surface, sometimes it hides beneath, waiting to be weighed, tested, and believed. Among professional numismatists, the study of this coin expanded into a science. Metallurgical analysis revealed the precise ratios of copper and zinc, the minute variations in plating thickness, and the subtle differences in die were between small date and large date varieties. High-resolution photography captured die markers, small nicks, scratches, or polish lines unique to certain production batches, allowing experts to trace the lineage of specific coins back to particular dies or even presses. What began as curiosity evolved into data, charts, and catalogs, a map of metal that told a larger story of evolution within the mint. As more data emerged, so too did the myths. Rumors spread about secret hoards of copper planchets discovered in forgotten mint vaults, about employees who had unknowingly taken home bags of rare 1982 coins, about private collectors offering astronomical sums to secure a genuine example. The internet amplified these stories, turning whispers into legends. Videos, articles, and online forums began to circulate tales of pennies worth millions, or, as some claimed, even hundreds of millions. The figure of $198 million, though largely symbolic, became shorthand for the boundless potential of discovery. Whether or not such value could ever be realized mattered little. It was the story itself that captivated the imagination. Beyond legend and speculation lies the undeniable truth that the 1982D penny embodies a key moment in American industrial and economic history. It is a snapshot of a nation adapting to change, a relic of decision-making under pressure. Even the smallest detail, the slight shift in weight, the reduction in cost, the preservation of design, reflects the balance between efficiency and tradition that defines American progress. Holding such a coin is to hold the intersection of policy, art, and circumstance. The market for these coins continues to evolve. As technology improves and collectors become more discerning, authentication has grown stricter. Grading companies use precision instruments to verify metal content and weight to the hundredth of a gram. Each verified coin is sealed within a clear holder, labeled with its grade, origin, and certification number. Once encapsulated, it transcends currency and becomes an artifact, protected against time and touch. Those few that qualify as authentic copper small-date 1982 D cents are treated like national treasures, their owners often remaining anonymous, their sales whispered rather than announced. For many, the coin's allure lies not in ownership but in the pursuit itself. The search binds generations, grandparents teaching children how to weigh coins, parents recounting stories of legendary finds. It becomes a bridge across time, connecting those who once handled copper in 1982 to those who may one day rediscover its brilliance. In that way, the 1982 D penny is not merely a collectible, it is a shared dream. Experts have likened its rarity to that of the great American numismatic legends, the 1943 copper cent, the 1955 double die, the 1969's double die obverse. Yet, unlike those coins whose errors are visible at a glance, the 1982 D hides its secret within. It asks the collector to look deeper, to measure, to test, to think. It rewards curiosity over luck, patience over haste. It is a teacher disguised as a coin, and so, decades after its minting, the 1982 D penny continues to defy expectation. It is a coin born from necessity, preserved by accident, and elevated by fascination. It reminds us that history is not just written in books but pressed into metal, circulating quietly until rediscovered by eyes willing to see its meaning. And it stands as proof that in every ordinary object, there may lie an extraordinary story waiting to be told, a story of change, chance, and the enduring human desire to find value in the smallest things. End of Part 3. Part 4 will continue with in-depth historical parallels, analysis of the minting environment in 1982, case studies of known specimens, and the continuing legacy of this coin in modern collecting culture. Time has a strange way of transforming the ordinary into the extraordinary. As the decades passed since 1982, the once humble penny became more than a coin, it became a time capsule, a small, enduring monument to a pivotal moment in American minting history. The 1982 D cent, born quietly in the Denver Mint, now stands as a voice from that era, whispering stories of transition, of craftsmanship, and of unintended rarity that continue to capture the human imagination. World around the coin has changed immeasurably. Currencies have shifted, economies have grown and faltered, technology has redefined the very idea of money. Yet the penny endures, its design still bearing the same familiar portrait, its value in daily life diminished but its symbolism undimmed. In this landscape of change, the 1982 D penny represents a kind of anchor, a reminder that even in the smallest denominations, history leaves its fingerprints. The Denver Mint of the early 1980s was a place of relentless motion. Rows of coining presses filled vast halls, each one pounding rhythmically, a metallic heartbeat echoing through concrete walls. Thousands of tons of planchets were delivered, inspected, annealed, and fed into the jaws of machines that would stamp them with Lincoln's likeness. It was industrial poetry, fire and metal, precision and noise, all synchronized to meet the nation's need for currency. Within that mechanical ballet, errors were statistically inevitable. But what made 1982 unique was that its errors were not mere mistakes of alignment or doubling. They were the unplanned overlap of two different coinages, a fusion of past and future in a single year. Historians examine the ledgers and production reports from that period. They see efficiency, order, and discipline. But the surviving copper small-date coins tell another story, of human imperfection amid mechanical perfection. Each of those few surviving examples is a silent witness to the moment when one handful of copper planchets slipped through the transition unnoticed, a whisper of resistance against the onward march of progress. The irony is striking. A mint designed to eliminate variance inadvertently produced one of the most desired modern rarities. Collectors who hold one of these coins often describe a feeling of awe. They turn it in the light, see the soft red glow that copper alone can produce, and feel the weight that betrays its authenticity. It is heavier, warmer to the touch, resonant when tapped. They understand in that instant that they are holding not merely currency but a fragment of a story, the kind of story that can never be replicated because it depends on a unique alignment of time, circumstance, and human decision. The 1982 D penny also tells us about the psychology of value. How does a coin worth 1 cent become an object that inspires multi-million-dollar speculation? The answer lies partly in scarcity but mostly in imagination. Human beings have always sought meaning in the rare and the imperfect. The rarer the object, the more we project onto it our hopes, our narratives, our reverence for chance. In the world of numismatics, that emotional projection transforms a piece of metal into a vessel of wonder. Economists sometimes dismiss such value as irrational, yet it follows an ancient pattern. The same forces that once made gold sacred or diamonds precious now elevate the 1982 penny. Its worth lies not in its composition but in its story, the drama of transition, the poetry of oversight, the harmony between accident and intention. It is the embodiment of a paradox, the smallest coin, carrying the largest narrative. Scientists continue to study the physical properties of these pennies, cataloging every nuance. Spectroscopy confirms the high copper content, while scanning electron microscopes reveal the crystalline structure of the metal, distinct from the zinc planchets that replaced it. Under magnification, even the texture of Lincoln's face differs, smoother in copper, slightly granular in zinc. Such minute distinctions remind us that art and science often meet in the smallest details. Every scratch, every polished line on the die, becomes evidence of the mint's evolving techniques. Numismatists have begun to trace the life journeys of known specimens. One coin might pass from the hands of an anonymous worker to a coin dealer, then to a collector, then to an auction house where it appears under bright lights, gleaming in its encapsulated shell. Auctioneers describe the hush that falls over the room when such a coin is presented, the sense that everyone present is witnessing a fragment of living history. Bidders raise paddles not just for ownership but for connection. And when the hammer falls, the applause that follows is less about money than about reverence for discovery. Outside those rooms, countless others continue their own quiet searches. They sift through jars, weigh pennies one by one, and listen for the tone that copper alone produces. Sometimes they find nothing but ordinary zinc, yet they continue. For them, the 1982 penny is not just a collectible, it is a symbol of persistence. The act of searching becomes its own reward, a ritual of curiosity that bridges generations. In this way, the coin's legacy extends far beyond the numismatic community. It speaks to something universal, the idea that value can hide in plain sight. Every time someone picks up a tarnished penny and looks closely, they participate in that legacy. The coin teaches that history is not confined to museums or textbooks, it circulates quietly in our hands, waiting to be noticed. There is also a deeper, almost philosophical layer to the story. The 1982 cent embodies the tension between mass production and individuality. Billions of coins were struck that year, each intended to be identical, anonymous, replaceable. Yet among them emerged a few that defied the pattern. Those few remind us that even within systems built for uniformity, uniqueness finds a way to survive. In that sense, the coin mirrors the human condition itself, countless lives shaped by the same forces, yet each leaving its own small variation, its own rare mark on history. The notion of a $198 million valuation may seem extravagant, but as metaphor it captures the essence of how society measures significance. Money becomes a language for wonder. When people speak of such a figure, they are not merely assigning price, they are expressing awe at the improbable, at the idea that a mistake so small could become a masterpiece so grand. The number becomes a symbol of possibility, an exaggeration that conveys truth through myth. Scholars sometimes compare the 1982 transition to earlier shifts in coinage. The change from silver to clad undiscovered fortune is to rekindle a sense of wonder that modern life too often dulls. As the decades have rolled on, the myth ly tangible. Its weight on the palm reminds us of the tactile past, a time when value was something we could hold, when history was struck into metal rather than stored in code. Perhaps that is why its story endures. It satisfies a longing for contact, for authenticity, for the texture of time itself. Each authentic example discovered renews that longing. When a collector finally confirms one, the scale steady at. With each passing year, the legend of the 1982 penny has grown wider, carried by collectors, historians, and dreamers who keep its story alive. What began as a quiet curiosity among numismatists has transformed into a saga, a living myth that spans continents, languages, and generations. This is no longer just the tale of a coin, it has become a chronicle of human fascination itself. In small shops across America, behind glass counters and under fluorescent lights, the 1982 cent continues to inspire whispered conversations. Coin dealers who have handled thousands of pieces in their lifetimes still pause when one of these rare coppers is mentioned. They lean closer, their voices lowering to that reverent hush that accompanies sacred artifacts. For them, the 1982 penny is both mystery and benchmark, proof that modern coins can still carry the same allure once reserved for ancient relics dug from forgotten civilizations, the known specimens. Those few authenticated copper 1982D small date cents are tracked like rare jewels. Each one has a certification number, a chain of custody, a record of auction results, and a legend surrounding its discovery. One was reportedly found in a roll of ordinary change by a collector who almost dismissed it until he noticed the deeper hue and subtle weight. Another surfaced decades later in a dealer's bulk lot, overlooked by countless hands before its true identity was revealed. Every discovery feels like a miniature resurrection, history awakening from dormancy. Those who have seen an authenticated example up close describe a singular feeling. The coin seems to glow from within, its copper surface catching light differently than the newer zinc issues. The luster is richer, the tone deeper, as if the metal itself remembers a different age. The mint mark D beneath the date looks the same as on billions of other coins, yet it carries a distinct gravity, the mark of the Denver Mint that, perhaps unknowingly, produced a handful of miracles. Collectors handle them with gloved hands, their breaths held, their eyes reflecting the coin's reddish shimmer. In professional grading labs, experts rely on microscopic examination to confirm authenticity. Weight measurements, metallurgical analyses, and die variety crosschecks ensure that no detail is overlooked. The authentic copper versions weigh around 3.11 grams, while the common zinc cents weigh only 2.5 grams, a difference small in number but enormous in meaning. It is that slight variance that separates history from the ordinary, value from anonymity. Instruments confirm what intuition already suspects: the coin before them is an outlier, a survivor from an age that has otherwise vanished. To the market, these discoveries send ripples that can last years. Auctions see sudden surges of interest, search engines fill with new queries from hopeful treasure hunters. The public begins to check their change again, echoing that eternal human hope that somewhere, something priceless might still be waiting in plain sight. News outlets occasionally resurface the story, reigniting the collective imagination. Every article, every broadcast, adds another layer to the myth, ensuring that the 1982D penny never fades from memory. Beyond the glare of publicity, however, lies a quieter truth. The true collectors, those who dedicate their lives to studying coins not merely for profit but for understanding, see in the 1982D cent a case study of human systems and their imperfections. It teaches that even in a world governed by precision and technology, chance remains a co-creator. The mint's careful controls, its machines calibrated to fractions of millimeters, could not entirely erase the possibility of error. And within that margin of imperfection lies beauty, the kind that no system can design. One might imagine the journey of a single copper planchet that slipped into the zinc production line in 1982. Perhaps it lay hidden among thousands of others, indistinguishable until the moment it was fed into a coining press. With one strike, it became an anomaly, a bridge between two monetary worlds. No one noticed then, it was simply one more penny among millions. It left the mint, rolled down chutes, clinked into bins, and entered circulation without ceremony. For years, it may have passed unnoticed through countless hands, paying for candies, newspapers, and coffee. And then, decades later, a collector's scale and a moment of attention turned that everyday object into something legendary. Stories like that blur the line between luck and destiny. What are the chances that a coin could survive decades of circulation, wear, and loss, only to resurface when its significance is finally understood? Each rediscovered 1982D set seems to rewrite probability itself. It reassures collectors that miracles can still exist in a mechanized world. In the numismatic community, debates continue about how many copper 1982D small date pennies might exist. Some believe there are only a handful, perhaps fewer than 10. Others speculate that more remain hidden, waiting in unsearched rolls or long-forgotten jars. The truth remains elusive, and that uncertainty adds to the intrigue. Because as long as there is doubt, there is hope. And hope is the heartbeat of every collector's pursuit. The financial dimension of this story adds another layer of fascination. Estimates of the coin's potential worth have reached fantastical figures, millions, even hundreds of millions in symbolic discussions. These valuations, though often exaggerated for dramatic effect, reflect genuine market psychology. Rarity drives value, and narrative magnifies it. In the realm of collectibles, a story as compelling as that of the 1982D cent can elevate price far beyond material logic. People aren't buying metal, they're buying myth, history, and the right to say, "I own one," but behind every auction and headline lies an emotional core. Collectors speak of the moment they first held a rare coin and felt a spark of connection across time. The same feeling arises when handling a Roman denarius or a colonial half-cent, a reminder that human civilization is traced not just in monuments and books, but in the small objects that passed from hand to hand. The 1982 penny continues that lineage, linking a modern industrial nation to its own enduring fascination with permanence and value. In classrooms, the coin has become an object lesson. Teachers use it to illustrate not only chemistry and economics but also philosophy, how value is constructed by perception. Students weigh copper and zinc examples, note their differences, and then confront the question, why does one command such extraordinary worth? The answer opens discussions about history, scarcity, and meaning itself. Through the simple medium of a penny, they glimpse the vast machinery of human belief that underpins all markets. Museums, too, have embraced the 1982 cent as an artifact of transition. Curators design exhibits around it, juxtaposing the copper and zinc coins under soft lighting to highlight the change in tone and weight. Placards explain the reasons behind the 1982 switch: rising copper costs, industrial efficiency, and the mint's need to adapt. Visitors linger, often surprised that something so familiar could harbor such complexity. The display reminds them that history is not distant, it hides in pockets, drawers, and purses. As technology evolves, digital reproductions and high-resolution scans of the coin circulate online, allowing anyone in the world to study its features. Every curve of Lincoln's profile, every faint die mark, becomes a clue in the collective investigation of authenticity. Online forums dissect these details with microscopic precision, creating a new form of scholarship, decentralized, passionate, and enduring. This democratization of knowledge ensures that the legend will never belong to any single institution. It belongs to everyone who chooses to look closely. Still, amid all this attention, the 1982 penny remains humble in size and nature. It measures just 19 millimeters in diameter, weighs barely more than a raindrop, and yet contains within it an entire epoch. The paradox is profound, a small, everyday object encapsulating a story vast enough to fill books, videos, and generations of curiosity. It stands as a reminder that greatness often hides in miniature. Emotional dimension of collecting is what keeps the story alive. For many, the 1982 penny represents possibility, the chance that life can surprise us even in the most ordinary moments. A child searching through a jar of coins might find nothing but spare change, or they might uncover a piece of living history. That uncertainty fuels a quiet joy that transcends money. The excitement of the unknown, the patience of the search, the thrill of discovery, all these emotions converge in that single copper coin. As long as one person still checks their change under good light, the 1982 penny's legend continues. It is both a mystery and a message, a reminder that history doesn't vanish, it circulates among us, disguised as the everyday. And in that disguise lies its true power. The collectors know this truth intimately. When they speak of the 1982 penny's immense supposed value, the symbolic $198 million that has entered popular lore, they do so not to boast but to celebrate imagination. Because in a sense, that valuation is not a number at all, it is a story's heartbeat quantified. It is the echo of curiosity, perseverance, and wonder made visible. And as long as people value those things, the coin's worth, both real and imagined, will endure beyond markets, beyond trends, beyond time. The Denver Mint, too, remains part of that living legacy. Modern workers there know the legend well. They handle state-of-the-art presses and digital controls, yet somewhere in the back of their minds, they remember that. As the years unfolded, the story of the 1982 penny began to transcend the boundaries of numismatics. What was once a topic of technical fascination became a part of cultural conversation. Artists, writers, teachers, and filmmakers began to find meaning in this small, copper artifact. It became a symbol, not merely of value or rarity, but of the strange alchemy that transforms ordinary things into carriers of memory and myth. At art studios and design classrooms, students study the penny's imagery, Lincoln's steadfast profile, the clarity of the lettering, the monument of the Lincoln Memorial on its reverse. These are not random symbols but deliberate emblems of endurance and unity. The 1982 coin, cast at a crossroads of material change, seems to capture the tension between permanence and transformation. In copper, Lincoln's image feels warm and living. In zinc, it becomes paler, lighter, more transient. For artists, this transition between metals mirrors the broader transformation of American identity, from the solidity of industry to the lightness of modernity. Writers, too, have drawn inspiration from the penny's journey. Essays, short stories, and even poems describe it as a metaphor for unnoticed greatness, for the silent endurance of the small against the tide of time. They imagine its long voyage through pockets, counters, and drawers, its quiet witness to generations of daily life. Some describe the 1982 D cent as the ultimate paradox, a coin intended for oblivion that achieved immortality by mistake. In classrooms, teachers use its story to teach not just economics but curiosity itself. The lesson is simple yet profound: pay attention. Look closer. In a world obsessed with the extraordinary, the 1982 D penny teaches that wonder often hides in the familiar. It invites students to see their surroundings as filled with potential discoveries, to understand that history doesn't only exist in archives, but sometimes jingles in our pockets. Coins' influence even seeped into the digital age. Online, collectors build communities where thousands gather to share discoveries, test weights, and post magnified photos under careful lighting. They debate die varieties, rim thickness, and letter spacing with almost scholarly devotion. For many, these discussions are more than hobby, they are a continuation of a centuries-old tradition of observation and patience. The 1982 D penny, in this space, is both muse and mystery, a shared language that unites people across geography and generation. Economists studying collector markets have noted that coins like the 1982 D penny reveal much about how human beings construct meaning through scarcity. In a purely practical sense, copper and zinc are not vastly different metals. Yet attach a story of chance, rarity, and historical context, and one becomes priceless. It demonstrates how markets are shaped by emotion as much as by logic, that behind every price tag lies a narrative, and behind every narrative lies a desire to connect with time itself. The lure of the 1982 D penny also touched those outside the coin world. Documentary filmmakers found in it a universal theme: the collision between chance and intention. One filmmaker described the coin as the smallest monument to human error ever made. In interviews, historians spoke of the mint workers of 1982. Ordinary men and women who could not have known that a single misplaced batch of copper planchets would one day capture global attention. The coin thus stands as a quiet testament to the unpredictable afterlife of our creations. As time moves forward, technology keeps reshaping how people search for and authenticate such treasures. Portable spectrometers, precision scales, and digital databases have replaced magnifying glasses and handwritten logs. Yet despite the tool's sophistication, the heart of the hunt remains unchanged. It is still driven by wonder, by the thrill that something miraculous might be hiding among the ordinary. The 1982 D penny continues to feed that instinct, keeping alive the very essence of exploration. Ecologists have even studied the phenomenon of coin collecting through this lens. They note that discoveries like the 1982 D penny satisfy a deep, ancient part of human nature: the need to find pattern and meaning in chaos. The brain responds to the possibility of rare discovery with a surge of excitement, reinforcing patience and curiosity. In that way, the coin has become not only an artifact of metal but a map of human emotion, illustrating how hope and curiosity shape behavior across time. Beyond personal stories, the 1982 D penny also carries a social resonance. During times of uncertainty, people are drawn to tangible things, objects that can be held, weighed, and kept. In an era of digital transactions and virtual assets, a simple copper coin represents something grounding and real. Its permanence contrasts with the ephemerality of modern wealth, reminding us that value once had texture, sound, and presence. Museums and archives, recognizing this cultural significance, began curating exhibitions dedicated to coins that changed the world. Among them, the 1982 D penny occupies a modest yet potent place. Curators explain how it embodies the unpredictability of history, how a small technical decision, made for efficiency, inadvertently produced an icon of rarity. Visitors gaze at it through glass, the reflection of their own faces merging with Lincoln's, as if to suggest that the coin's story is also their own, a story of endurance, of unnoticed transformation, of legacy forged by accident. There are myths, too, tales of undiscovered rolls sealed since 1982, of unverified finds that might still rest in forgotten drawers, of coins lost and waiting. Whether true or not, these stories feed the living legend. They keep the spirit of search alive, reminding everyone that discovery is not finished. In this way, the 1982 D penny becomes both a symbol and a story engine, a perpetual invitation to wonder. Symbolic $198 million value often cited in conversations is not about wealth at all. It is about reverence. It is an expression of collective awe, a way of measuring wonder with the language of numbers. The true worth of the 1982 penny cannot be contained by price. It exists in the moments it inspires, in the thousands of people who pick up a coin and look a little closer. Its fortune lies in awakening awareness. The cultural impact of this small coin has, in subtle ways, reshaped how people think about collecting. Before the 1982 discovery, modern cents were often dismissed as too recent to matter. Rarity was assumed to belong to the distant past. But the emergence of the copper 1982 shattered that assumption. It proved that history is ongoing, that even recent decades hide secrets worth uncovering. Collectors began paying renewed attention to modern mintages, studying them with the same devotion once reserved for centuries-old coins. Curiosity expanded, and with it, respect for the craft of minting. Denver Mint itself carries that legacy with quiet pride. Visitors touring its halls sometimes ask about the famous 1982 error, and guides recount the story with both humility and fascination. The machines have long since been replaced by newer models, but the spirit of vigilance remains. The workers know that every planchet, every strike, is part of a story larger than they can see, a story that may not reveal its significance until decades later. In this way, the 1982 penny reminds us that history is not static. It evolves with perspective. What seems ordinary today may become extraordinary tomorrow, depending on what future generations choose to notice. That realization changes how we see the world. Every moment, every artifact, every decision holds the potential to become legend. Perhaps that is its truest legacy. It reminds us that the smallest details can carry the greatest truths. It whispers that every object, no matter how common, has a hidden story, if only someone cares enough to listen. As long as that lesson endures, the 1982 penny will never truly leave circulation. End of Part 6. The next installment, Part 7, will explore the emotional legacy of collectors, their personal encounters with discovery, and the symbolic meanings the coin has taken on in the collective imagination. Among collectors, there exists a quiet moment that cannot be captured in words. It is the instant when the scale settles, when the numbers flash 3.11, when the mind understands before the heart dares to believe. In that silence, centuries of human curiosity condense into a heartbeat. For those who have lived that moment, the discovery of a 1982 copper penny is not just a find, it is a revelation. To the untrained eye, it looks like any other penny, the same familiar face of Lincoln gazing forward, the same date, the same mint mark. Yet within that ordinary appearance lies a secret powerful enough to change lives. Collectors speak of trembling hands, of disbelief so profound they check the weight again and again, hoping the scale is wrong yet praying it isn't. They describe a rush that feels like touching time itself, as if the past has reached forward through decades to place something extraordinary in their palms. One man once told of how he found his treasure in a jar on his father's workbench, a jar that had sat untouched since the 1980s. He'd been sorting through the coins on a rainy afternoon, counting them absent-mindedly, when he felt that one penny seemed just slightly heavier. Curiosity led him to the scale, and the result changed everything. His voice shook when he recalled the moment. He said it felt as though the universe had whispered, reminding him that wonder still exists in the simplest corners of life. Another story tells of a woman who inherited her grandfather's coin collection, filled mostly with common dates. She almost sold it without looking through it, but decided one evening to examine each piece. Near the bottom of a small envelope labeled 1982 mixed cents, she found one that gleamed differently. She weighed it, then sat in stunned silence as realization dawned. For her, the coin became more than a valuable rarity. It became a connection, a bridge to a man who had passed down not just coins but curiosity itself. Stories echo through collector communities like folklore, passed from one voice to another, each retelling carrying its own reverence. They remind us that behind every discovery is a human story, one of patience, perseverance, and belief in possibility. The 1982 penny has become a symbol of that belief, proof that magic can still exist in a world ruled by machines and measurements. The emotional bond between collectors and their coins defies simple explanation. To some, it may seem strange to feel affection for an object of metal and design. Yet for collectors, each coin represents a fragment of human history that they can hold in their hands. Every scratch, every tone, every imperfection tells a story of where it has been. The 1982 penny, in particular, carries within it the weight of countless stories, of mints and workers, of decisions and oversights, of hands that passed it unknowingly through the decades. Over time, this emotional connection deepens. Collectors often speak of their coins as living companions, as silent witnesses to their own lives. The 1982 D copper cent becomes not just a piece of currency, but a reminder of time's continuity. The same metal that once moved through an entire nation now rests preserved in a capsule, its glow untouched by years. It becomes a relic of permanence in an age defined by change. In interviews, some collectors confess that they rarely look at their coins for fear of smudging them, yet they know every detail by heart. They can recall the texture of the rim, the exact color of its luster, the faintest curve of the date numerals. In their minds, the coin is not static, it lives, it breathes, it holds conversation with memory. When they speak of it, their tone softens, as though referring to a friend. Psychologists studying such attachments have noted that collecting, especially of rare items like the 1982 D penny, creates a unique blend of identity and aspiration. The object becomes a mirror, reflecting both who the collector is and who they wish to be. In the careful search for authenticity, there is also a search for meaning. When a collector holds the genuine 1982 D copper cent, they are holding proof that patience, knowledge, and intuition can bring the impossible within reach. Coin also bridges generations. Families share the story from parents to children, grandparents to grandchildren, transforming the act of collecting into a shared ritual. It teaches patience, observation, and respect for detail, virtues easily lost in the rush of modern life. When a child learns to distinguish copper from zinc by tone or weight, they are not merely learning about metal, they are learning how to see. They are learning to pay attention, to recognize the extraordinary in the ordinary. Many collectors describe their first encounter with the 1982 D story as a spark that ignited a lifelong passion. They read about it in a magazine or saw it mentioned in a forum, and suddenly their change jar became a treasure chest. Each coin they touched after that carried the faint possibility of magic. This quiet transformation, from routine to wonder, is what keeps the legend alive. It is not the price that matters, it is the feeling that discovery is always possible. In this way, the coin has become part of modern folklore. Its story spreads through conversations, videos, articles, and whispered hopes. Each retelling changes slightly, shaped by imagination, by the yearning to believe that hidden fortune still exists in plain sight. It is this shared dream that keeps millions looking, that sustains the heartbeat of numismatics in a digital age. Beyond personal sentiment, the 1982 D penny also symbolizes a larger truth about human creativity. It demonstrates how our attempts at perfection inevitably produce imperfection, and how those imperfections, in turn, become the most cherished. The Denver Mint sought precision, yet it was imperfection that created immortality. In that irony lies a profound lesson. What we call error, time often transforms into beauty. The more people learn about the coin, the more they realize that its story is not merely about minting, but about the human condition. The desire to find, to hold, to preserve, these are not just collecting instincts but reflections of who we are. We seek permanence in an impermanent world. We seek connection through artifacts of the past. And sometimes, in that search, we discover not only history but ourselves. In this way, the 1982 D penny continues to travel, not through circulation, but through hearts and minds. It appears in documentaries, in classrooms, in conversations that bridge strangers. It has entered the mythology of modern times, standing alongside tales of lost paintings and buried treasures. And yet it remains humble, small, unassuming, its power lying precisely in its simplicity. Those who have seen one never forget its color. That deep, almost glowing copper tone that reflects light softly, as if holding a secret. They describe it as warmer than gold, more human somehow, more real. Perhaps that is why, after all these years, people still care about a coin worth 1 cent, because it feels like a reminder that worth is not measured by denomination but by story. In the quiet of night, somewhere in the homes of collectors across the world, there are coins resting in velvet cases, sealed in plastic, glinting faintly under lamplight. And among them, perhaps, one or two of those elusive 1982 D copper cents sleep, silent, unassuming, yet pulsing with history. They wait, as they always have, to be seen again, to remind us that even the smallest things can carry the weight of wonder. End of Part 7. The next section, Part 8, will explore how the legend of the 1982 D penny influenced modern collecting technology, authentication industries, and the shifting psychology of rarity in the 21st century. As the years turned and the 1982 D penny drifted further into legend, the world around it began to change. Technology crept into every corner of life, even into the quiet world of numismatics. Collectors who once met in dimly lit coin shops or dusty convention halls found themselves connecting through glowing screens. Forums, auction platforms, and digital archives became the new gathering grounds for the curious, the hopeful, and the devoted. And in the center of many of these discussions, one name continued to echo. The 1982 D copper set, what had once been a whispered rumor among enthusiasts, was now a subject of serious study. Digital scales became more precise. High-resolution cameras allowed collectors to scrutinize details invisible to the naked eye, and advanced X-ray fluorescence analysis could determine metal composition with microscopic accuracy. Yet even in this new age of data and precision, the coin retained its mystery. No amount of technology could diminish the thrill of the search, the quiet pulse of discovery that accompanies the first glimpse of that D beneath the date. Each passing year, more stories emerged of those who claimed to have found another specimen, though only a few were ever authenticated. Entire online communities formed around sharing photographs, weighing results, and debating authenticity. The process of verification itself became almost ceremonial, a ritual of hope and proof. One would post a photograph, others would comment on rim thickness, mint mark positioning, or font style, comparing and contrasting against known examples. And though most turned out to be ordinary zinc cents, the shared experience of searching connected thousands of people who might otherwise never have spoken. In this new digital era, the 1982 D penny became a symbol not just of rarity, but of community. It proved that curiosity could bridge distance, language, and culture. Collectors from every continent, using translation tools and shared databases, could communicate their findings in real time. A photograph from one side of the world could inspire excitement on the other. What had started as a local minting anomaly had evolved into a global phenomenon. Auction houses, too, began to evolve. Major platforms introduced high-definition video previews of coins, virtual magnification tools, and digital certificates of authenticity. And behind all of this change lay one core truth the 1982 D penny had helped to reveal, that even in an era defined by instant gratification, the hunger for discovery endures. Technology could make searching easier, but it could not replace the feeling of wonder when a collector holds something rare and ancient in their hands. Psychological dimension of collecting began to attract academic interest. Researchers in economics, anthropology, and cognitive science studied what drives people to chase rarity, to invest countless hours in pursuits with uncertain reward. Their findings painted a portrait of a uniquely human phenomenon, a blend of memory, identity, and hope. Collectors, they found, are driven not merely by financial gain but by a need for narrative continuity, a way to give structure to time. Each coin becomes a chapter in an ongoing story of curiosity and meaning, and this framework, the 1982 D penny, stands as a perfect case study. It embodies rarity born not from intention but from accident, a twist of fate that turned a routine minting year into an eternal puzzle. It demonstrates how randomness and human perception interact, how we imbue accidents with purpose and transform them into legend. The coin's scarcity, authenticity debates, and dramatic valuation have made it a subject of fascination not just for collectors but also for philosophers who see in it a metaphor for value itself. How society decides what is precious and why. Museums and numismatic societies began to reference the coin in exhibitions exploring the cultural meaning of currency. Alongside ancient Roman denarii and gold doubloons, a single 1982 D penny might rest under glass, its copper surface glowing softly under museum light, accompanied by placards describing its history. Visitors would pause, sometimes confused. Why, among coins worth thousands of dollars, did a single cent command so much attention? Yet as they read, they would understand that its worth was not in metal, but in myth. Influence of this coin also reached the world of minting itself. Mints around the world studied the 1982 transition between copper and zinc as an example of how small material changes can ripple through history. The United States Mint, mindful of public fascination, began to release more detailed documentation about composition changes in subsequent years, hoping to prevent confusion yet inadvertently fueling even more curiosity. The lesson was clear: transparency does not extinguish mystery, it often amplifies it. Beyond institutions and collectors, the story seeped into art and culture. Sculptors, photographers, and writers began to use the image of the penny as a metaphor for time and transformation. Art installations featured walls covered in thousands of ordinary cents, with a single 1982 D replica hidden among them, inviting viewers to search, to feel the rush of discovery. Poets wrote about the idea that the smallest things can contain the greatest meaning. In their verses, the 1982 penny became a symbol of unnoticed miracles. For young collectors just entering the hobby, the coin served as both inspiration and mythic challenge. Forums overflowed with newcomers asking how to identify one, what scales to use, where to start searching. Veterans offered guidance, teaching not only technical skill but also patience, the essence of numismatics. They reminded the new generation that the real value lies in the process, not the outcome. And so the cycle continued, as it always has, curiosity giving birth to discovery, discovery giving birth to legend, legend giving birth to hope. The economic aspect also grew more complex. As news of high auction prices spread, speculative interest surged. Some began hoarding pre-1982 copper cents by the pound, betting that the intrinsic metal value would one day surpass face value. Others scoured rolls from banks, searching for errors and anomalies. Coin dealers saw renewed interest in bulk penny sales, as the humble cent, often overlooked in the digital payment era, regained symbolic importance. In this way, the 1982 penny revitalized an entire sector of collecting, reminding people that history hides in plain sight. And yet, amid all the frenzy, those who had truly studied the coin spoke of something quieter, a sense of reverence. They understood that beyond the market value, beyond the media attention, lay a deeper truth about how we relate to objects in time. The 1982 penny was not just a collectible, it was a mirror reflecting our longing for continuity, for connection to an era when things were tangible, measurable, and lasting. In recent years, technological advances such as blockchain certification and digital ledgers have begun to reshape the idea of authenticity itself. Some coins are now registered with unique digital fingerprints, a convergence of the physical and digital worlds. Yet even as technology promises certainty, the emotional heart of collecting remains analog. The warmth of copper cannot be digitized, the texture of age cannot be replicated. The 1982 penny continues to remind us of that truth, that the most meaningful things are those we can hold, those that carry the weight of touch. As the story moves through the 21st century, it becomes clear that the legend of the 1982 penny is not fading. Instead, it is evolving, adapting to new mediums, inspiring documentaries, podcasts, and digital exhibitions. In classrooms, teachers use it to explain economic transitions and the value of observation. In online marketplaces, its name still draws eyes and curiosity. It remains what it has always been, a mystery that invites participation. Somewhere, perhaps in a forgotten jar of coins resting on a kitchen shelf, another one may still lie hidden. The world has changed, currencies have gone digital, markets move at the speed of algorithms, yet the simple act of holding a penny still feels timeless. The 1982 penny, in its quiet endurance, becomes a lesson in patience, in humility, in the enduring power of the small. The legend lives not because of rarity alone, but because it speaks to something universal, the human desire to seek meaning in the overlooked, to believe that within the ordinary lies the extraordinary. It tells us that history is not buried in distant ruins or locked in museums, it circulates in our pockets, waiting to be noticed. The legend of the 1982 penny had already crossed generations, but as the 21st century deepened, it began to transcend collecting entirely. It became something larger, a cultural mirror reflecting how humanity perceives worth, memory, and the fragile relationship between rarity and meaning. It began as a single year's minting decision in 1982 had, through the passage of decades, transformed into an emblem of fascination. People no longer spoke of the coin only in terms of metal composition or minting process, they spoke of it as a symbol of rediscovery. It was no longer merely copper and zinc, it was nostalgia, curiosity, and a quiet reminder that value is not dictated by design alone, but by the stories we build around it. Across social media, documentaries, and numismatic gatherings, the 1982 penny continued to draw attention. Artists painted it. Filmmakers used it as a visual motif, a flash of copper in a black and white scene, a single glint in a story about time and memory. Poets mentioned it in lines about loss and chance. And collectors, both seasoned and new, still found themselves captivated by its mythic status. As technology advanced, even those who had never held a physical coin began to encounter its image. Digital reproductions, 3D scans, and high-definition visuals allowed people around the world to examine every detail of its face. The faint ridge of the rim, the careful engraving of Lincoln's profile, the small yet unmistakable D-mint mark, all became iconic. What once required physical presence could now be explored virtually, and yet, even through the screen, the coin retained a strange, magnetic gravity. For many, the 1982 D penny came to represent something deeply human, the intersection of chance and intention. It reminded the world that even in systems built for precision, imperfection gives rise to meaning. The Denver Mint, through a combination of oversight and circumstance, had inadvertently created a monument to serendipity, proof that human creation, no matter how controlled, still leaves room for mystery. This theme resonated far beyond the coin world. Educators began to use the story of the 1982 D penny as a metaphor in classrooms. In lectures about economics, it demonstrated how scarcity drives perception of value. In discussions about art, it illustrated how accidents often lead to masterpieces. And in philosophy classes, it sparked questions about the very nature of worth, how something can be both nearly worthless in one context and unimaginably precious in another. In popular media, the legend grew even more ornate. Television segments revisited the story with cinematic flair, narrators describing the transition from copper to zinc as if it were a turning point in civilization. Documentaries followed collectors on cross-country journeys in search of the fabled coin. In one such film, an elderly man opened an old coffee tin filled with pennies, his hands shaking as he poured them onto a table, explaining that he had been saving them since his youth. "You never know," he said softly, "one of these might be the one." That simple phrase captured the spirit of the search, the essence of hope that defines human curiosity. The 1982 D penny, rare and nearly mythical, became a vessel for that hope. Every jar of coins, every roll from the bank, every handful of change held the faint possibility of miracle. And though almost no one would ever find the genuine copper specimen, the dream persisted, growing stronger with each passing year. The economic world took notice too. As stories of multi-million-dollar valuations circulated, collectors and investors alike began to view coins not only as historical artifacts but as alternative assets, tangible pieces of culture that could endure through economic shifts. The market for rare cents flourished. Auctions drew global attention. And at the center of this movement, quietly gleaming under museum light or in the protective capsule of a private collection, the 1982 D penny stood as a reminder that even the smallest artifact could shape markets and minds. That wasn't only about money. Those who truly understood its significance saw in it something far more profound, the endurance of wonder in a world often too busy to notice small things. In an age of digital currencies, contactless payments, and vanishing cash, the penny's existence became an act of resistance against forgetting. To hold one was to hold a piece of a tactile world, a link to the era when every exchange involved a sound, a texture, a weight in the palm of your hand. Perhaps that is why the story continues to move people. Even as society accelerates toward abstraction, this coin remains solid, physical, reassuringly imperfect. It reminds us that value once had heft, that meaning could be touched. It tells us that in our pursuit of perfection, we must not lose sight of the beauty in chance. Cultural historians have noted how legends like that of the 1982 D penny reflect an enduring human desire to find magic within order. We build systems, economies, mints, rules, and then celebrate the moments when those systems falter just enough to create uniqueness. These moments become the seeds of myth. And the myths, in turn, keep us searching, keep us hoping, keep us human. Around the world, exhibitions began displaying the coin not only as numismatic rarity but as cultural artifact. One gallery installation featured an enlarged projection of a single penny slowly rotating under light, its surface reflecting shades of copper and amber while a narrator recited lines about time and transformation. Visitors stood in silence, watching as the coin revolved, hypnotic in its simplicity. For them, it was more than a coin, it was a meditation on impermanence and discovery, and as the legend grew, so too did its symbolic price. Whispers of valuations reaching hundreds of millions began to circulate, amplified by headlines and collector lore. While experts debated the realism of such figures, few could deny that its symbolic worth had already surpassed any measurable currency. It had become priceless in a different way, not as an object of trade, but as a story shared by millions, and that story lay the essence of humanity's relationship with value. Money, after all, is a human invention, a shared belief in worth. And when that belief takes on emotional meaning, it transcends numbers. The 1982 D penny proved that truth. Its power came not from its rarity alone, but from the way it captured imagination. It reminded us that even something designed to be ordinary could, through chance and attention, become extraordinary. Today, in museums, documentaries, and collector conversations, the coin still gleams with that quiet, magnetic aura. People still weigh pennies, still peer at dates, still dream. They do it not out of greed but out of wonder, a wonder older than money itself, the same curiosity that drove explorers to map the seas and scientists to measure the stars. The 1982 D penny is a small embodiment of that boundless drive, the human need to uncover meaning, to find story in the smallest of things. In the end, the coin's journey is our own, from ordinary beginnings to unexpected significance, from circulation to preservation, from the physical to the eternal. Each time someone learns its story, the legend renews itself. And so it continues, decade after decade, generation after generation, an unbroken chain of fascination. Perhaps, even now, somewhere in a forgotten attic, inside a jar untouched by time, another one waits. It lies among thousands of others, indistinguishable until the right pair of eyes sees it. And when that moment comes, when light hits it just right and the scale tips just enough, another story will begin. The myth will breathe again, and the legend of the 1982 D penny will continue its endless journey through human memory. Time moves forward, as it always does. Generations come and go, technology replaces touch, and the small copper coins that once clinked in pockets are slowly fading from daily life. Yet even as the world changes, some stories resist fading. The story of the 1982 D penny is one of them. It endures not because of what it is, but because of what it represents, the unending dialogue between chance and meaning, between the ordinary and the extraordinary. In the long history of money, countless coins have been struck, circulated, worn, and forgotten. Billions of cents have passed through hands without a thought. But every once in a while, one coin defies that fate. It refuses to vanish into the background noise of commerce. It asks to be seen. And in that act of defiance, it becomes immortal. The 1982 D penny did not ask to be special. It was born in a moment of transition, when the mint sought to save copper, when materials changed quietly behind the scenes. No one who struck it could have imagined the impact it would one day have. Yet history has a way of hiding treasures inside moments of indifference. What seems insignificant in one era becomes sacred in another. And so, a simple cent became a monument. To hold one today is to feel a strange duality, the weight of history and the lightness of luck. It feels familiar, yet different, ordinary, yet sacred. It connects the present to a time when craftsmanship was mechanical yet still deeply human, when each die strike carried the possibility of imperfection. And perhaps that is the quiet truth the 1982 D penny has taught the world: perfection is not the goal. It is in imperfection that beauty finds its voice. As collectors continue to study its mysteries, as researchers document every known specimen, as storytellers and filmmakers breathe new life into its legend, the coin continues to evolve. It no longer belongs solely to the realm of numismatics. It belongs to the realm of myth, where human stories intertwine with artifacts, where an object becomes an idea. In that sense, the 1982 D penny has achieved something no mint could have designed: it has become timeless. Its existence blurs the boundary between currency and symbol. It stands as a reminder that history's greatest treasures are often accidents, that destiny can emerge from oversight, and that meaning can be found in the most unassuming places. Even now, decades later, it continues to inspire the same ritual of discovery. Someone somewhere is emptying a jar of old coins, letting them tumble onto a table. One by one, they are examined: the dates, the mint marks, the feel of the metal. And though the chances are impossibly small, the hope remains. That hope is what keeps the story alive. Because every discovery, real or imagined, begins with belief. The sound of coins falling, that small, bright chime, is more than nostalgia. It is memory returning. It reminds us that before there were screens and algorithms and data, there were hands and metal and sound. That a penny could travel across time and geography, carrying within it the energy of countless lives. The 1982 D penny embodies that journey, the quiet proof that meaning never truly disappears, it only waits to be noticed again. Perhaps this is the truest lesson it leaves behind, that worth is not assigned by decree, but discovered through attention. Every time someone looks closer, weighs carefully, wonders quietly, they honor that idea. They affirm that curiosity is still alive, that wonder is still possible, that history still whispers beneath the surface of everyday life. As the final chapter of this story closes, one can almost picture it, the coin, resting under soft light, its copper surface glowing with the warmth of ages. Lincoln's face, calm and resolute, gazing toward a horizon that never ends. The faint D beneath the date, holding secrets it will never fully reveal. Silence around it, as if even time holds its breath, and beyond the glass case or protective capsule, The world continues, cities hum, machines move, people hurry. But somewhere, in that motion, there remains a small, steady heartbeat of remembrance. The penny that defied its era still glows. Its story still circulates, not through markets, but through minds. 1982 penny reminds us that history is not lost, it hides in plain sight. That the smallest details, a number, a letter, a weight, can change everything. It reminds us that discovery does not belong to the past, it belongs to the present moment, to whoever dares to look closer. So the story ends where it began, with a single cent, an object so simple it could be mistaken for nothing, yet powerful enough to become everything. It remains, forever, a testament to chance, to time, and to the human heart that keeps searching, keeps believing, keeps finding wonder in the smallest things, because in the end, the 1982 penny is not just a coin. It is a reminder. A whisper from history saying, look closer.